Hey everyone, welcome to the Reach and Teach Show. My name is Joana Fleur, and we're on episode 2 today. I'm coming to you today from Redding, California. I am normally in Toronto, Canada, but today I happen to be visiting some friends in Redding. Maybe you know Bethel Church. I just have some friends here that I have been visiting, so I'm glad to be with you. Before we get too far into today we're talking about on the Reach and Teach show every week, we're talking about how communications can help you with evangelism and discipleship in your own church. Of course, obviously, most of the evangelism and discipleship stuff that you're doing is probably face to face, it's real life in front of people. But um, in the meantime, I think that communication tools, digital content, print content, all that kind of stuff can help us reach people here, reach people on our phones, and reach people in our churches, reach people in our communities all over the world. So, before we go too far, I'd like to just let you know a little bit more about who I am talking. And by the way, this whole time, I see there's a bunch of you who've joined me already. Feel free to do anything down in the comments, say hi, ask a question. I love if we could interact a little bit on this live every week because then I'm actually answering questions or engaging with what you actually want to talk about. I always will have stuff prepared, but anything you want to talk about, leave it down in the comments below. And if you're watching this after in like a post broadcast, then if you leave a question below, I'll make sure to answer it or engage with that content in the next week's episode. Okay. Oh, by the way, happy long weekend, everybody. In America, it's President's Day. In Canada, it's Family Day. Canada, where I'm from, is a long weekend as well, but we don't have presidents. So apparently, we celebrate the family today. All right, let me show you a little bit about me. My name is Joana LaFleur, as I've said, and I am a speaker, podcaster, TV host, and consultant. So I've come with a bunch of years of experience serving in local churches and nonprofits. Just up until about 6 months ago, I was on staff at my local church, and was on that particular staff for about 9 years, and a lot of that time doing communications. And now I've transitioned into working with all kinds of churches, ministries, missions, nonprofits, helping do communications. And then as a result of that, I have a podcast called Word Made Digital. In Canada, I'm on a TV show, a women's TV show. You can think of it kind of like The View. It's like a women's talk show where, from a Christian perspective, we talk about all kinds of things. And then I'm also a consultant. So I just wanted to throw that up there so you can see a little bit about who I am. And the last note really is just I have global perspective, but theologically grounded approach. And what I mean by that is I've lived all over the world. And so I've seen that there are all kinds of ways to do things. And I've been part of a number of different denominations during that time as well. So I've seen different ways denominations do things, different cultures do things, different levels of technology through my experiences living in multiple continents around the world. And then the theologically grounded is just that, in addition to the communications business degree side of me, I also have a master's in theology. And so I think that lends itself to communications and being able to serve you in any way I can through these live feeds that we're doing every week because I'm not just thinking about it practically in the church, like how to do the business of church, but I'm also thinking about theologically. The example I always give with that would be from a practical perspective, we can now live stream all of our church services, which is awesome. That we have that technology to do that. But then from a theological perspective, we also want to think about, should we do that? What are the consequences of doing that? How do we think about baptism? How do we think about taking communion together or Eucharist together if we are on online church? And so that's where the two parts of me are, the theological side and the communications business side, and I want to bring them together into our conversations every week. So speaking of that, I would love to, as we go into some practical content around digital evangelism. And what I mean by that is not just that you're evangelizing people on the internet, but actually that what are the digital tools that we can use to help us when we meet with people face to face, when we're serving people, when we're tangibly with people and loving people? What are the ways that digital content can help facilitate that? And the reason that we're even talking about that is I would love to give you a little bit of kind of a timeline of where we've come from. And if you check this out with me, I'm going to throw this little graphic up on the screen. Okay, I want to give you a little history of where we're at today compared to where we come from. So you can see on the screen here, we started in the 1500s with the print revolution, and today we're in the digital revolution, and the future is ours to write. But even before that, I'd like to go way back with you, if we can, before the 1500s, and I want to talk about the digital technology that changed with when Jesus appeared on the scene. Have you ever thought about why did Jesus come with his good news, the best news in the world, at the particular time in history that he came? Well, one of the sort of theories in terms of world history of why God in his sovereignty might have chosen to come at that particular point in time is because for the first time ever around the year 2000, around that time when Jesus walked on the earth with us, uh, the Romans, of course, were ruling the world. Rome was the center of everything. But part of that was they built a road system, and we often don't think about that as a communications technology because we're just so far beyond that at this point. But for the first time in history, in around, the year 2000, when around the time when Jesus showed up physically in the flesh, God in flesh with us, for the first time ever, there was a system that would allow communication to go literally to the world through road systems, through sailing systems, through all this stuff that you could actually take a message, a printed piece, something that someone had written, and actually carry that from town to town to town. And not just content like printed content, but also people. People with a message could, for the first time ever, actually go to the ends of the earth, so to speak. And so there's a lot of people who, when they speculate about the historicity of Jesus, we want to think about why did he come then? Well, part of it could be, in fact, that for the first time when Jesus said, go to the ends of the earth, like the Great Commission, tell everybody about me, make disciples of everybody. For the first time ever, you could actually do that because this communication tool had come into place, which is just simply roads. Roads could bring messages and people to the ends of the earth. But then where I have this on this timeline, we see the 1500s, the print revolution. At that time, of course, everything changed again. And if you are a communications nerd or a church history nerd in the 1500s, when we for the first time could have a printing press that would print rather than writing everything by hand, painstakingly repeated over and over, we had a machine that could take an idea and replicate it over and over and over with a machine rather than just with a handwritten thing. So that meant things like, for the first time ever, people could actually have a Bible in their own home. And it began a revolution that moved writing the Bible in the local language, not just the language of the priests in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, but we actually had Bibles in our own mother tongues. Those would have been languages like Italian and German and English and Dutch and French and those kinds of languages. It transformed the way people connected to Scripture, connected to their own faith in God, because for the first time it wasn't just a priest who could access it. So, as a result of this technology change for communication, having a printing press, it radically transformed how Christianity was lived out in day to day life. Could you imagine if you were one of these people who, in the past, owning a Bible would have maybe been the equivalent of owning, like, I don't know, like a Lexus SUV? Like it was, tens of thousands of dollars in modern currency to be able to own a Bible. It was something that not everybody could afford to buy. And so most people who were just normal people didn't have that in their home. But then with the print revolution, people had it. And all of a sudden, ideas began to spread. The evangelization of the world happened in a whole new way with the assistance of communication technology. Now, part of that, of course, was the Reformation, the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther came in the early 1500s, and he began writing ideas about how the church could reform itself, how it could better serve people and not just the leadership. And it began again to radically transform the way that church happens. And so, as a result of that, if you know any of the story of Martin Luther, he nails these theses to the door of the church is sort of the famous way they did it. It was a bulletin board; anyone could have put stuff up there, but this went and spread like wildfire. He wasn't intending to have a split in the church. The Protestant, literally the protest that happened between now the Catholic and the Protestant church, and we have been split now for 500 years. There's been more division and more division and more division in the church as we've become sharers of ideas, but also then because we can share our ideas, we can actually begin to disagree on those ideas. And so, in many ways, the printing press moved in great leaps and bounds the ability to do evangelism, to reach and to teach people about Jesus, about the ways of God as we read in the Bible. But at the same time, it began to actually split people. It began to make arguments and divisions in the church, and actually, that's not far off from where we're at today. So when we come to today, the digital revolution in the 2000s. We're all interacting right now on the internet. Hey, just another, I see a ton of you are watching live. Any questions, comments, insights? Have you ever thought about this before? Have you ever thought about the print revolution or the Roman road system and how it's affected our ability to reach and to teach people? And of course, the digital revolution we're in now, the internet age. I would love for you to comment below, say, hey, let me know you're watching. But also, if you have any questions or comments or stuff you want me to address, stuff you're wondering about this, I'd love to get into that with you. But as we come to today in the 2000s and the digital revolution, that is the revolution of the internet, it's not unlike what we can think about as we look back in history at the printing press, that as evangelism and discipleship began to go out, this reaching and teaching of the people through having printed words in hands being more affordable than ever, ideas being able to be spread quickly because it didn't have to be written by hand over and over again. Obviously, the same thing is happening with us on our phones. These devices that we carry with us has radically transformed how we live our lives, how we buy things, how we get information about things, but also how we're communicating with people we love and people maybe we don't even know yet in the world. It's places that we're able to connect and share ideas and reach and teach people in a way that we've never been able to do before. But as a result of that, of course, also, just like happened in the print revolution, there can be a splitting. And I want to just, caution us all as we go out onto the internet that what we do has consequences. And as we go out with grace and love and truth about who Jesus is and what we believe and why we want other people to hear this best news in the world, we always want to keep in mind that what we're doing should be done in a loving way, in a way that is full of grace as well, because as we've seen in the print revolution, it can radically break the church apart. It can make divisions and splits within us that sometimes maybe we could argue might be necessary, but either way, that they have huge consequences in what we're doing and what we're thinking about. So when we're talking about reaching and teaching people, and I'm thinking about a digital context, this context that we're in right now here on the screen, I don't necessarily mean that we're only communicating digitally, but rather this digital revolution, as we look at its place in history, has transformed everything about what we do. And of course, you know that in your own life, you have people in your life who you have real, physical, flesh and blood relationships with. But you also have those same people in your life interacting with them through your thumbs on the phone over video chat. I mean, if you're a person who's traveling for work, maybe you're going to FaceTime your family while you're away and you're interacting with them that way. Of course, you would rather be in real life interacting with them most of the time. It's so awesome when we can be together with people. But even when we're not physically together, the digital thing has allowed us, these things in our hands have allowed us to, in a radical new way, interact 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to the ends of the earth. And so we want to think about how these digital interactions can help serve and facilitate when we had those physical face-to-face interactions. And so one of the things I want to talk about too with that is just a few of my philosophies throughout this whole show. Every time I talk, there's a few of them. The only one I want to really focus on today, these are some philosophies that I use in my communications training and content when I'm serving churches and ministries. But the one I want to highlight today is number one, where it says digital first, but not digital only. Digital first, but not digital only. What I mean by digital first, but not digital only is just that if there is a way that we can, if there is a way that we can think about how to serve people and interact with people in a digital way first, we want to think about doing that. Why? Because they have it in the palm of their hand. Everybody has this device that they're using all the time. And how can we think digital first in a way to have an impression with them, in a way to talk to them, in a way to meet them, in a way that we've never been able to reach people before, but not digital only. There are still, and there's still a very important and significant place for face-to-face interaction. For in communication tools, we're talking about print pieces or physical, tangible things that people can hold in their hand that will help us communicate good news about Jesus to the world. But when I say digital first, what I mean is there a place we can first introduce people to an idea? Is there a way that we can first get people to sign up for something, to come to an event, to get information about something? So, a practical example of this is what I think about with um, ads, advertising, literal, like come to my church ad. I don't know if we want to call it evangelism exactly, but it is a way to reach people. Advertising reaches people. And so when we're talking about ads, I would imagine that if you're working in a local church, let me know if this is you. You're getting calls or emails from your local paper who are asking you, will you put ads in the local paper, the printed paper, for coming up to Christmas and Easter, or even just your Sunday services in general? I know when I was working on a church staff, we would get calls all the time from the local paper saying that they wanted us to put an ad in the paper. And here's the reality: they cost a ton of money. And most people don't read the local paper. And even if they do read the local paper, they're probably not reading the little classified section that has the church ads in the corner. And so you're spending a ton of money on something that um, very likely is being thrown in the recycling bin the moment it's received. If it's just like the local free paper, which is usually the place we try to advertise churches. But even if it's not being thrown away immediately, how do you even know that they've read that section of the paper where your ad is? And then even further, how do we know in a print ad if if the people who are reading our ad are people who we want to reach? The people who are reading the church section ads of times and services within a local newspaper are probably people who already go to church. They're people who are already interested, so they're probably not the people you're actually trying to reach with your information. And this is why I say digital first about about advertising. Over a newspaper ad or a magazine ad in your local community, I say digital first for ads. Maybe not digital only. Maybe you also want to think about an ad campaign in a local newspaper, or maybe you also want to think about like a printed flyer that can be put in a mailbox. I've done those a ton of times. But when I say digital first, I want to think, what's our first priority? What's our biggest budget? What's the most amount of time we're going to spend? I want us to think about that as digital ads if we're thinking about reaching people in this content, in this context, in this day and age. So digital ads, for example, on Facebook, the cool thing is if you can hire people to do this for you, but if you're doing it just by yourself, the cool thing is that you can target your Facebook or your Instagram ad as specifically as you'd like. You can target it by the geography, like within 5 miles of our church. We want to reach people who live just within a 5 mile radius. We want to reach people who are between ages, I don't know, 25 and 45. You can be that specific. And we want to reach women because this ad is going to target moms, because we know that if we can get the mom to come to this event with her kids, then the whole family is going to get involved if we can reach that woman. We know a lot of women are on Facebook more than men. So we want to reach women who are within a 5 mile radius of our women in a 5 mile radius of our church who are between 25 and 45. So kind of in that mom age bracket. And I don't know, it could be like they like books, or they like book clubs, or they like soccer. I don't know, whatever it is. You can get really that niche. You can be that specific about the kind of person that you're trying to reach. And then Facebook is actually going to show you how many people you're likely to reach with your ad. So you have a little video or a little graphic that you pay a little bit of money. And I'm talking pennies on the dollar compared to print advertising. It's way, way cheaper. But here's the other thing. And this is for you if you're the person doing communications in your church, but you're not the leader, ultimately the person who is making budget decisions, who is having to give you money to do this thing you want to do with reaching people through an ad. The thing about digital ads is you can actually know if it worked. Did people click on it? How long did they watch the video for? How many people followed through from there and went to the website to get more information? There's all kinds of stuff you can do with a digital ad like that that you can't do with a print ad. When you put a print ad out, or you make a billboard in your town, or you do a flyer drop in the neighborhood around your church, you have no idea what happens. It goes out and you get no information back except anecdotally. Like, maybe the person who comes is going to be able to tell you that the reason that they came is because of that ad that you gave them. But I think that a lot of the time we don't actually really know what happened to them when we do a print ad only. It goes out into the world and we have no way of measuring it. But your leader, your boss, your manager, your elders board, whoever it is, they're going to love that when you spend money on ads that are digital, reaching people with a message to, you're invited to our Easter services, or like, are you struggling and feeling alone? Come to our moms group, or whatever it may be that you want to talk about. Uh, it means that you're actually going to be able to give information to the people who are giving the money, the information to the people who are making decisions about how to spend money in your church with digital ads in a way that you weren't able to do with print, because print goes out into the world and it's kind of hard to know where it goes unless someone comes specifically and says, I'm here because I got your flyer, or I saw your ad in the paper, which usually doesn't happen. Usually they don't actually tell you that, even that if that is why they came. And so with digital ads, you're able to see the level of interaction. You know if people passed it by or like threw it away like you would with a print ad. You actually know. And so that would be just a huge encouragement to you. So I don't know if any of you want to let me know, have you done Facebook ads, or have you done Instagram ads? Have you tried ads on Google? I'd love to hear if that's been effective for you, if you've seen anyone come to your church or come to an event because of those ads. I'd love to know if you're reaching people that you want to reach through those ads. So you can just leave a message below if that's you and if that's what you're doing. And so the other thing is, you want to think about when we're trying to reach people with digital ads, is we want to think about what we're saying in that content. And so simply, we want to have a great image. And if you don't have images already, maybe you can find a stock photo that looks not super stock. Like, stock photo is like those photos that anyone is free to use. But the photo that I would want you to use would be something that looks a little bit more personal, a little bit more friendly. It's ideal if you can get a photo that's actually from your church community. But if you don't have that, then maybe you can use a stock photo to promote it. But the key thing really is the headline too. So the catchy image, the image that pulls somebody in, but then a headline. Maybe it's a question like, are you feeling isolated or feeling alone or struggling with finances or whatever it may be? And then when they are that person who's struggling with their finances, then they can click and see, or pause on your ad for a minute and see that you're offering a financial peace course, or you're offering alpha, like a dinner and a conversation every week to talk about faith and questions that really matter in the world. And you're going to give them a free meal while you do it. Or maybe it's a mom's group and you want to do a Facebook ad that's specifically reaching moms in your neighborhood, and you can be that targeted just to talk to the moms in your region or in your neighborhood around the church. So the headline at the top could be something like, hey moms, we see you, or something. And then below it's like, we'd love you to come to our free thing. We have free childcare, and you can come and connect with other women who are just like you, going through life just like you. And I think you can encourage one another at this event. Free cup of coffee, free childcare, why not? And that's the kind of thing where if you can reach people with sort of like how they're feeling in that moment. Think of, as they're scrolling through social media, as they're on their phone, what is something they might be feeling or thinking about? And we can reach them in that moment on digital platforms. Now, of course, as I continue to talk about digital for evangelism or reaching people, that never separates itself from the actual in-person connection we want to have. So if you advertise to someone and said, single mom or struggling mom at home with all your kids, come, for our free childcare and have a cup of coffee and connect with other women. And then if you've said that on your ad, and then they come to your event for moms and like nobody talks to them, or it turned out that they got there and they had to pay for the childcare and they weren't prepared to do so, or honestly, it was just like a negative experience because human interactions were so bad. It doesn't matter what kind of ads you do on the internet, it's going to be a bad experience. And if it's a bad experience, they're probably going to tell people about their bad experience. If it was a good experience, maybe they'll tell people too. But for sure, if they came to your church because of a digital ad that invited them in and promised something that was going to help them, serve them, meet a need that they had, and you didn't meet that need, or you made them feel isolated or alone or like an other, or you weren't prepared for them when they arrived in terms of welcome and friendliness and maybe just clear signage to know where to go in a building, then like all of that can fall away. So, as much as we talk about the digital ads, these things that can reach people right on their phones, right where they are, if we're not also thinking about that in person, physical connection, that in person interaction, then it doesn't really matter how good our Facebook ads are because they might come, but they're going to revolve right back out the back door. Like it's just a revolving door of people. And so we always want to keep that in mind when we're reaching people. Another simple idea um, for digital reach is simply for your church to be involved in popular hashtags in your local community. And this costs you $0. So, for example, if there is a spring fair coming up, or if there's a big Easter event at the mall, or really, it doesn't really matter if there's like a slogan that people use, like I don't know, like New York Strong or whatever it is in your local community, that might be some hashtags that either you create and try to build some momentum around with people in your community, or hashtags that people in your community are already using. If you can add some of those into the posts that you do on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, then it helps people find your content. So you might be posting about like, it's a great day for church, can't wait to see you, and you use a hashtag that's for something in your local community, like I don't know, what city is it? We love New York, or New York Strong, or I mean, just saying New York because it's a city we all know, but whatever your town is or whatever your region, maybe it's a hashtag um, for like maybe the local mayor or the local town council has hashtags that they use. Why don't you use them too? It'll encourage them when they see other people using them, but also hashtags are really how people can help find your content on the internet. When they click on the hashtag, it brings up all the posts that have ever used that tag. And so if there's a local ice cream shop, a local burger joint, if there's a local place that's using hashtags that would make sense for you to use too, if you use those, you never know who might come across your post because of a simple hashtag that costs you, again, $0. It costs you nothing to use. You just need to think about what are the ways that we can reach people in our community where they already are, how they're already interacting. And then, of course, keeping in mind that when they show up at something that we have offered them, when we've invited them to church, we want to make sure that the experience we've invited them to is welcoming. It doesn't need to be flashy, it doesn't need to be cool. People aren't looking for that. They're looking for real, they're looking for authentic, they're looking for a meaningful encounter with a real person. And so all this digital content can be amazing to help connect people to something they never would have been exposed to before. They maybe never even heard of your church before. They never heard of Jesus. They never heard that you might have a mom's group that's a free thing that would encourage them as a struggling woman at home, or a senior citizen who's feeling lonely by themselves every day, whatever it may be that you want to offer to the community to serve and to love them. Just want to make sure that if we're talking about it digitally, that the in-person experience is as good as promised. And so we don't want to overpromise something is going to be amazing, and then when they show up, everyone was rude to them or unwelcoming to them, or it was all this churchy language that nobody understood when they arrived, and they felt like really like an outsider. And it's not about being cool, it's just about being authentic. So when people come, are we welcoming them? Are we looking them in the eye? Are we being friendly but not too pushy, not getting too involved in their life? All right, well, we've already run out of time. So I just want to let you know about a quick way you can reach me if you're looking for Let's see if I have it on here. I'm not sure if I have it on here. If no, I don't. But you can see right down on the bottom here, hello at Joana LaFleur, or you can find me on Instagram at Joana LaFleur. I'd love to connect with you here. Post stuff in the comments if you're whenever you're watching this. Post something in the comments so I can answer it next week. Reach out to me by email or on Instagram so we can interact, continue the conversation. I'd love to help you, love to serve you and your church in any ways that I can. And I will see you back here next Monday for another episode of Reach and Teach.